Good morning, everyone. Oh, I think you can get more from that on a Monday morning. Good morning, everyone. Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today here at the Kennedy Center. My name is Jeanette McCune. I'm the Director of School and Community Programs, which means I get the great pleasure of working with students from all over the country who get a chance to come to be at the Kennedy Center. And we are so delighted today to be here with the U.S. Department of Education for the Education Games Expo. So we are so excited that you're going to be here with us today to have a chance to hear from some amazing game developers. And I'm going to introduce my very good friend from the U.S. Department of Education, Dr. Ed Metz.
Thanks, Jeanette. Thanks so much. So everybody, how often do you get to hang out at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts to play education learning games? That's pretty cool. Thanks to Jeanette and the Kennedy Center team for putting on such an amazing event with a focus on the creativity and the arts in the design and development of learning games. Special thanks to the Kennedy Center. So we have attendees in the office here from DC schools. Thanks for coming out. We also have a live simulcast going on so that people around the country and the world can tune in. So we're really excited about that opportunity to share what we're doing here across the federal government. After the talk down here, today and tomorrow, we're going to have 130 learning games and technologies available for you guys to try out. And what's really neat is that you can also ask the person standing there, the developer, how they developed the game and the technology. It's a very unique opportunity to do so. One thing to know is that most of the games and technologies were developed with the support of 25 different programs in the federal government, including programs from the Department of Education, the National Science Foundation, the National Institute for Health, the Smithsonian, the Library of Congress. I'll stop there, but it's a lot of programs, and we're really excited to support such innovative work. So, we're down here today to hear from 8 of the world's leading experts in game development, how they made their game. They're going to lead you through the process of how they developed their game. And what's really cool is you're also going to learn about all the different roles and careers that it took to develop the game. And the idea is that you guys sitting in the audience and watching on the simulcast can think about how learning science, math, engineering, reading, writing, and the arts can all play a role in game development and design. So hopefully when you leave here in 20 minutes, you'll be thinking about the role that you'd want to play in developing a game. So, let's get on with it. We have Carpenter here to give the first talk. Kara is the co-founder of Teachley, a New York-based learning game studio. And Kara is a former teacher, so who better to be up here to tell you about Teachley's math games. Thank you.
So that's just a little preview of the game that I'm going to talk to you all about today. It's called Teachley Fractions Boost. Okay, good. And like Ed was saying, I'm going to take you through sort of from the very beginning of our process in thinking about designing that game all the way through until the final product, which is what you guys just saw. I need to go backwards. I'm not sure if I did that right. Okay. So one of the things that was the inspiration for this game is actually a lot of educational research about how kids learn about fractions. And one of the things that these researchers found out is that 5th graders, so how many of you guys in the audience are in 5th grade? Any 5th graders? Ooh, we've got some back there. Okay, who's in 4th grade? lots of fourth graders. So you guys next year, third grade or younger? Any third grade or younger? Okay. Oh yeah, we've got some young ones. Awesome. And then anyone older than fifth grade? Teachers, educators, building leaders. Awesome. Okay. So what these researchers found is that in fifth grade, how well students can answer this kind of question, which requires that you think about 7/8, which is a fraction, and a number line. And where would you put that 7/8 on a number line? That question, or how well kids answer that question, actually can show how, like, it's a leg up. If kids do really well on questions like this, they're going to have a leg up in junior high and in high school in doing well in mathematics. So it's this really sort of, they saw it as like, oh, this is this really important thing, and maybe we can do some work on helping kids get better at this kind of thing. And so I and my co-founders, I'm not very good at pressing these buttons, I think. Okay. My co-founders and I, we're all former teachers. I taught mostly second grade. Any second graders? No? Okay. Mostly second grade, a little bit of seventh and eighth, a little bit of third, fourth, and a little bit of 3-year-olds. And then my partners are also former teachers, and we met in graduate school, and we were studying cognition and learning. So we were studying about this kind of research. And so we thought to ourselves, okay, it seems like the researchers are doing this thing. How can we take some of those ideas and really bring them into a game? And so that's where the National Science Foundation came in. And they gave us 2 different grants to be able to develop these games. The first one was a prototyping grant. So they said, okay, you have 6 months. Do as much as you can and test it out, and then we'll sort of see how it goes, and then you kind of reapply, and if it all goes well in that first phase, the prototyping phase, then they give you more funding to be able to really develop the whole thing, okay? And so during the prototyping phase, okay, great. During the prototyping phase, here are some of the people who were involved. We actually had a woman, Sylvia, who was still in college. She was studying computer science and game design, and she came and worked with us over the summer and really started helping us build out an initial prototype. Now you can see from those pictures over there, it doesn't actually look too much like the game that you saw at the beginning, but this is what the prototype looked like. It was a little simpler, it was kind of narrowed down in focus, and it was just about creating something that we could test really quickly. And then Sam Kahn was another developer who worked on the project, and then Matt Witham is an amazingly talented artist that we worked with. And the big thing for us about this prototyping phase is we were really interested in what we call the learning mechanic. Game developers talk a lot about game mechanics, which is the thing that inside of the game that you do over and over and over again, right? So inside of this game, the thing that kids were doing over and over and over again, we want to really tie into learning and tie into thinking about learning. And so, I keep accidentally pressing, I think. Okay, so I don't know if you guys can see these slides very well, but we had this car, right? And they're racing towards a number line, and the student is moving the car this way and this way to try and get to, this is the fraction 2/4. The first time they hit the line in the wrong place, and so this is the first hint that they get. And it says tap 4 times. And as the student taps the screen 4 times, that number line shows you, it first will have 1 segment, then 2, then 3, then 4. So do you see how in the second picture there are 4 little lines? Okay, and then let's say that the student still gets it wrong. The next time we'll say, okay, now move 2 of those segments, and we'll actually have a little a line showing where the car is going to go. So we did all this time really thinking about how can we get kids to understand, what's the meaning of the denominator? Well, the denominator is how many times you're dividing the whole, or how many pieces you're dividing it into. And then the numerator, the number on top, is where you sort of need to go. And some of the things we found is that sort of really making both of those, the meaning of both of those numbers really explicit, we saw huge gains in terms of students' ability to understand this idea of fractions on a number line. And so then we went on to develop the big game. And this is the team Thanks. This is the team that worked on that larger game. And so we're in New York City, and you can kind of see the city behind us. And I'll talk more about who each of those people are and their role. Thanks. Okay, so our first developer this time is a woman named Jade, and she, her background, just so you know a little bit about kind of what education she had to get this job, is she studied math and computer science, and then she also studied game design really specifically. And she helped us to develop out our initial prototypes. One of the other things that we do is we work with a lot of students. So we worked with 3rd through 5th grade students in an after-school program in New York, and we sort of just kept bringing, each time we had a new build, we bring it to the kids, they test it out, they let us know what's working, what's not working. And so some of the early stuff that we did was just thinking about how can we make, instead of in that last picture, I don't know if you saw that all of the little hints and stuff were really up at the top of the screen. What if we make that bigger and make it even clearer for students? And then, and this is work that my partner Dana did a lot of work with students on. Next slide. Yeah, and then John Mercado is an amazing 3D artist. And his background is in both sort of game and art design, as well as sort of thinking about sort of game design more generally. And he builds, this is his like computer setup at home, lots of screens, lots of things happening on the screen. And so he's actually the one who built both the like 3D car as well as like the 3D world of the space of the tracks and how those tracks all fit together. And so instead of being like those pictures you saw at the beginning, you have the game experience that you saw in the video. Yeah, so you can see a little bit of some of the initial sort of work that we did with students, testing out the new game pieces. Okay, and then one of the other people that's involved in this, and his work, so Chris, his work, he's a back-end developer, and what that means is he deals with the data side of things. So it's really important to us that when kids play our game on one iPad or on one device, on one Chromebook, they can come back and they don't have to start all the way at the beginning again. They can like keep playing right where they left off, okay? That actually requires that we start collecting some information about where you are in the game. How many points do you have? What color is your car? What did you choose? And that we're able to sort of collect that information, and then the next time that you want to play, even if you're playing at home, or if you're playing on a different device, or you're playing somewhere else, we can send that information right where it belongs. And so we have a back-end engineer who works on making all of those sort of data connections possible. And Chris does work across all of our games, not just fractions. And so he's trying to think about how can we make this experience of playing all kinds of learning games? How can we give teachers a single place to log in, and then all of the different games sync up with that login information, so you don't waste your learning time kind of logging into games. And then one of the other things that Chris helps us work on is when you're playing the games, we can be sort of giving information to your teachers about who needs help and who's doing really well. And so we have a dashboard that helps do that. And for teachers, one of the things we're interested in, there's the next slide, is making sure that we're giving teachers information that is actually going to help you. Not just saying, oh, you've got a 75% or you've got this many points, but like this is who understands this is who needs help with this, and how can we sort of help and support them. And we have, that got cut off a little bit. And the pictures are funny, but so basically, myself and my partner Dana and our back-end developer Chris really work together on this teacher dashboard. So you can see in this example that the teacher is able to sort the list by how well students know unit fractions, for example. And then they can see a lesson right next to it to help the students who are struggling with that, with unit fractions in particular. Okay. And then the last sort of members of our team are the sort of tens of thousands of kids and teachers out there who are sort of playing our games, or playing this game specifically, and giving us lots and lots of feedback, letting us know, hey, you know what, if you actually play this game at home, you'll probably discover this. We're still trying to fix it. But there are places where you can actually fly your ship you're off the track. But they're helping us by giving us this kind of feedback. They're helping us figure out, oh, there's actually a hole in the track, and we need to make sure that we can find it. So one challenge to you all is, if you do end up playing these games, see if you can get your ship to fly off the track. And if you do, let us know where it happened and when and what you were doing right before, which side of the track you were on, whether or not you were going fast or slow. All of that kind of information really helps us as developers to know, hey, this is where the specific mistake is. So thank you so much. And I think now there's time for questions.
Yeah, we're going to do 2 questions, 1 or 2 questions. Do any of you guys have some questions?
Yes.
And why don't you just say your question and Kara will repeat
I'll repeat it back.
Can hear.
Yeah, so there's a girl in the back in a yellow long sleeve shirt, I think. Oh no, you turned around. You're not quite that far back. Yes, your friend is pointing at you. Never mind. Okay, somebody else? Okay, right up front here in the pigtails. What happens when you get off the track? Okay, so sometimes what happens when you get off the track is you're able to get right back on, and that's the best scenario. Sometimes you get off the track and you can't get back on, and so you need to restart the level. That's why we want to fix it, the problem. Okay, other questions? Yeah, the one in the blue t-shirt, yeah? Awesome, I'm so glad. Yeah, so Fractions Boost is sort of a fractions game. We also have games for younger students too. I'm gonna be in booth 1 upstairs, which is like right when you come in. And so you can come and try out Fractions Boost, see if you can get off the track, and or any of our other games that we've got, okay? And is that it for time?
Great, I just want to repeat how exciting Teachley's games are. And to reiterate that a few years ago, Teachley won an Apple Design Award for its IES-supported learning game, which was very impressive feat.
Yeah, Animals was our very first game, and it was chosen as one of the 12 most innovative apps of 2014 out of the tens of thousands of apps in the App Store. So it was very exciting. So come up the stairs and play Animals too, especially the younger sort of kids in the audience.
Great, so thanks so much. So it's 10:20. You guys now get to go upstairs and try out Animals and 129 other games in an hour and a half. It's not humanly possible. Play a few, see what you like, let us know. And we're gonna reconvene here at 10:30 with the next talk with another group of students. Thanks a lot, everybody. See you next time.
Thank you.
But I always have problems with those too. you get home as well. Maybe you'll see your hand on the screen. Look for that tonight. In any event, we're here at the Ed Games Expo at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. We're so excited and thankful to the Kennedy Center for hosting us. Round of applause, please. And upstairs, we have 130 learning games and technologies, most of which were developed with the support of federal government programs. So we wanted to show off what we've been doing in the federal government the past few years at agencies like the Department of Education, the National Science Foundation, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And one of the awardees of the USDA SBIR program is here with us. Come on out, Maria. And Maria is a developer, a founder of 7 Generation Games, and she's going to talk to you guys about how the game was made. And the goal for her talk, and all the talks the rest of the day, are to give you guys ideas about the different roles and careers that make up being a game developer. There's a lot more that goes on behind the game than you could ever imagine. So Maria's going to talk about that. And then at the end of Maria's talk, if any of you have a couple questions, we'll have time for questions. So thanks so much, and Maria will take over from here.
Perfect. So good morning. I'm Maria Burns-Ortiz. I'm co-founder and CEO of 7 Generation Games. And when people say, well, what does that mean? What do you do? I make video games. And lots of people say, oh, I want to make video games. That sounds like a lot of fun. I thought that too. So I decided, well, if I'm going to found a video game company, I need to get some really good people. So I got my team here, and we came together to make games. Now, how do you make video games? All video games start like this. Nothing. Just a blank sheet of paper, maybe an idea in your head you haven't even put down. Well, how do you take them from this to this? Now, you're probably looking at this thinking, I could probably draw something better than that. How is that a video game? Our very first video game we made, my co-founder drew this out. She said, I want the game to look like this. So if you look here, there's some levels, there's some trees, there's kind of a lake, there's a river. That was the very, very start of our game. And so we took it from that to this. So you see the river, and there's some deer, and there's some fishing. So we took it from that into a game that now thousands and thousands of kids are playing both around the country and in some other countries as we expanded. Well, I was thinking about how to talk about how we make games and what goes into it. And I was thinking, games pretty much are like a body. There's a bunch of different pieces that have to work together, a bunch of different parts in order to actually come alive, to be something that you can play. And let me explain. I'm going to start with research. So research is kind of like the backbone of the game. It's the spine of your game. Research is everything that the game is built upon. Everything that your game's going to do, you start with research. Now, when I say research, the first thing that might come to your mind is information, right? And probably Google. Because when you research something nowadays, everybody goes and searches Google first thing. We do that, but also one of the things is we go to the library. I don't know if you guys have been to the Library of Congress, but I love the Library of Congress. I come out every time I'm in DC and try to go there because they have millions of books. They have a photo collection, archives where you can ask them to pull special photos for you, and you get to see photos that maybe people haven't asked to look at for decades. And so you get to use that information. So we start with that. We start with searching. Then we look at what's worked. What makes people like some games and hate other games? How can we use that when we build our games? And because we're building games that teach people, we also look at how can we use what effectively works to teach kids? So we take what's worked. And then we go to places. We're doing a game called Aztec Games. It's a series, and it talks about the Maya. Well, we thought we can Google up, and we can look at images of the Mayan jungle, or we could go down there. So these are pictures that we took on the trip. That's jaguar, that's the jungle. I gave it to my artist, and he made me that jungle with a jaguar. Same with the pyramids. That's an Aztec, or Mayan pyramid, sorry, and that's what we made it out of. So part of it is not just searching the internet. Research can be so much more. Well, then we get to design. design is like the heart of your game, right? Everything that you do, it runs through everything, the design. So every element, just like blood runs through your entire body and your heart pumps blood through your whole body, the design runs through every element of the game. It's your story, your characters, everything in your game, whether a character moves left, what happens, right, what happens, all that is hit on in the design. And so your design basically starts with a question. What is your game about? What kind of activities do you want your game to have? Do you want it to be a puzzle game? Do you want it to be a first-person game? And then, what is the goal, the rules, the point of your game? And that sets the tone for everything else that you do. And we put all of this in something called a design document, and it includes everything, every element of the game, pages and pages. We have a script. So kind of like a play or a movie has a script, and it has all the words, and it tells you what the scene looks like. We do that for every part of our game. And then we have a path, which means every single path you take, every page, everything in order goes through our game. And so these things are all part of the design. Then the code. So if the design is the heart of your game, the code is the brain. And that's because the code pulls all the pieces together. It takes all of the information and tells it how to interact with each other. It says, if you push this, you want your character to go right, it should go right. It says, if you need this picture to come up, this picture should come up from here. That's how the code works. And code is really important because you need it to work together, but it's coming from a bunch of different people. Just like all the cells in your brain cells will relay messages to other cells, that's kind of how code works. And if there's a problem with someone's code, it's not going to work. And that is a big problem. Now, there are 500 different programming languages and that used to build games, although a lot fewer are used to build games. But how many people speak a second language, speak at least 2 languages, right? So programming languages are kind of like that in a way. When you learn one, then the second one becomes a little bit easier, and the third becomes a little bit easier. So that's how you can build out your skill set with a whole bunch of different languages. And then games use something called a game engine. So you don't need to start from scratch every time. There's some certain things that you can just use over and over. And so they've created engines where you put your code into that and it builds upon what's already there. So next is art and animation. So you have your spine of your game, your heart, your brain. Animation is like the skin. And it's the part of the game you see. It's the part that defines the world that you view, what the characters look like, what the scenes look like. That is the art and animation. And artists have a tough job because they have to take this, which is something by someone like me who is not an artist, right? There's a nice stick figure and a basketball hoop, if you can't tell, and make it look like this. Or they take this, which again is just someone's idea in their head, and they have to figure out what that looks like. And so this is a maze game that we have, and this is an example of how things start to come together. So the game was designed by the designer, and this is how the game's going to work, and it's a maze, and you go, and you get through the desks. And then the artist put the art part together and said, okay, here's what the desks look like in the classroom and the people. And then the developer took it and made it into actually something that you can play. Now, I'm not just saying the art is like the skin of a game. Sometimes what people do a lot of times, because you don't always want to start over from scratch every time, is they take what's called the back end or the code part, and they put new art on it, and it's actually called reskinning the game. And if you look down here, there's kind of that maze game I showed you, and there's another maze over here from a different one of our games, and that's the exact same game, we just put new art on it. Same here, if you look at this one over here, this maze game, those two look pretty similar, and that's because we took it and we put new art on it. So, and just like the developers, all of their code needs to work together. It's the same thing for artists. You don't want one part of your game to look really different. Just like it'd be weird if you had an arm that was green or purple. You want your whole scene and all of your characters and everything to look similar. And so artists, even though everyone has their own styles that they might like, a really big skill for artists is being able to make it look like someone else's style or the game-defined style. Now, sound and music. This is the voice of your game, right? sound is one of those things where if you think about it, we don't really watch silent movies that much anymore, but we still listen to the radio or music. And it really pulls you in. It helps tell the story in a way that just looking at something might not. It helps it come alive, right? And there's a bunch of different kinds of sounds you can have in a game. There is music. This is Eric. He's one of our composers and music within a game. And then there's sound effects. Jonah did a bunch of those. And sound effects are interesting. If a horse comes by, you're not really recording a horse walking through your office, right? Or if it's raining, you're not really outside with a microphone in the rain. But you're doing things like taking a pie pan and dropping rice on it or stomping things on the desk to make it sound like that. And then there's character voices. So we do games in English and Spanish, and Lakota actually, but Diana does all of our Spanish language voices. So they're the character voices and they help bring the character alive. Testing. So one of the most important parts of your body, and you don't necessarily think about it probably, is your immune system, right? If you don't have an immune system, you're gonna get very, very sick, and that's bad. You could possibly die. It's very similar for game companies, right? Everything's gonna have bugs when you first develop it. There's gonna be mistakes. Nothing is perfect. But you have to get rid of those bugs before you actually put your game out there for people to play, because no one wants to play something that's gonna crash and break and kick you out of it every 2 seconds. In order to do that, we have testers, and we have 2 different kinds of testers. We have in-house testers, who are people who work for us, and their whole job is to play video games, which sounds fun, but they have to play it over and over and over again. We'll say, go and get all the answers right. Now go get all of it wrong. Now go and always turn left. Now go and run here and stop here, quit the game, come back. And they try it every which way, and we say, see if you can break it, because if you can break it, then we need to fix it. And then we also have beta sites, which is schools that say, we'll use your games and we'll test them, and we'll use them in our classroom. They get it after the in-house testers, and they build it out from there. And just like you're always trying to build and grow stronger, we're always trying to build better games, right? So you work out, you eat healthy, you go to school, you try and learn. And that's what you do when you're building games. You build better games. You build on what you've already developed. You learn how to do new skills and include them in your next game. And that's what we're working to do. And that's how you build better video games that are more fun, more effective, and that more kids get to play. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. Hey, can you tell me why you became a game developer?
We started and we were looking at and working with a bunch of different communities, and we were seeing that kids weren't doing well in math. And now we're from 2 different worlds. My co-founder loves math. She could eat, sleep, and breathe math. And I kind of wasn't a big fan of math in school. I thought maybe it was boring. I wished it would have been learned better, taught better. And so we decided to make a way to make it more fun and more engaging for the kids. For kids who love math, it was going to be fun anyway. And for kids who weren't quite sure if they like math or not, it'd be a better way to do it, a new way to try it. So that's why we started what we're doing.
Cool, that's incredible. So we have time for a question. Does anybody want to ask a question? Great, and when you ask the question, you can repeat it so everybody can hear on the webcast.
Yeah. Yes. Oh,
It's you.
With the red glasses. Yep. So where do I get the ideas for our games? Where do we get them? That is a great question. We sit around, sometimes we have ideas that we think might be good, right? So we actually use history as our storyline, because we think that math, when you're teaching it, it shouldn't just be 5 times 7, 5 times 9, 5 times 6, but how can we integrate that? How can we make it part of a story? And we thought, where do you get really good stories that are also educational and interesting? And we found history was full of them. So we started with that, and that's kind of where we get our ideas from. But we get a lot of ideas from kids, too. Like sometimes they'll say, I hate this part, or you should have more of this. And so we talk to kids over and over and over, because sometimes your idea that you think will be great isn't. And then when kids start playing your game, you get a lot of new ideas.
Great, thank you so much. One more question.
All right, over there in the back, with the black jacket. So how many people does it take to make a game? That's a great question. For us, we probably have about 20 people working on a game, but then you have some people who maybe 1 or 2 people make a little app or a game, and then you have big, huge video game companies that have thousands of employees. So it just depends, but we have about between 15 and 20 people who've worked on the projects that we do.
That was a really great question, and I think that was the point of our talk today. Yeah. It's to think about the 20 different roles that it takes, and how are you guys going to find a role for yourself? Yeah. So,
and I'm saying if other people have questions afterward, I'll just be down here and you can stop by and ask me.
Great. So Maria will go in the back and answer other questions, and then definitely go upstairs to try out the games yourself. Lastly, Maria gets the award for our most loyal Expo presenter. I think you've done this 5 straight years, which is incredible. And she comes from California to do it. So thank you so much, Maria. We really appreciate it.
And thank you guys for being so great at listening and asking great questions. Thanks.
So you guys are going to head back upstairs. You have another hour to try out 130 games, see who can do it. And we're going to reconvene with the next group in about 5 or 10 minutes. Thank you. Maria, that was so...
Are you? Are you excited to be here? Fantastic. Let's give a round of applause for the Kennedy Center and everyone who's let us be here today. All right, my name is Jake Steele. I work at the U.S. Department of Education in an office called Planning, Evaluation, and Policy Development. My whole job is to focus on you all in K-12 education, specifically in educational technology, and focusing on how we can improve that so learning is always fun and we're getting the best we can. I'm going to introduce you to two friends of mine today, if you would come out. Shannon and Nita. Everyone, let's give them a round of applause. So they both work for PBS Kids Digital. Shannon is the content director, and she oversees the content of the games of things that you'd probably recognize, like The Cat in the Hat and Wild Kratts. Have you heard of them? Sounds fantastic. Nita is a senior associate, and she is over gameplay and the testing that goes along with that, and they will explain for you today what they do and what goes into it. So without further ado, let's welcome them.
Thank you. All right. We are really excited to be here and to talk to you all about our games, who makes our games, and also a little bit into the process of how we make them. So,
all right, so let's talk about games. Clap if any of you guys have ever made a game before. Yeah, a couple of you? Clap if you've ever wanted to make a game. All right, let's see. Clap if you guys have ever played any of these games before.
all right. That's awesome. Okay, so it's very obvious that you all have played at least one of those games, or at least many of those games, right? Okay, but today we're going to talk about who makes these games. More importantly, what are the skills that you need to know? What do you need to keep learning in order to make games? But even more importantly than that, what kinds of passions, what kinds of hobbies do you have that could actually help you make games? And you might not even know it. So today we're going to take a look at one game that we're making here at PBS Kids. And I want you all to be thinking about the entire time, what do I love to do that could help Nita and Shannon make this game, or definitely games in the future? So let's talk about the game, right? So this is a game from our show called Ready, Jet, Go. And we're still working on the game. And we're thinking the title might be Jet's Robot Creator, but I definitely want your feedback at the end to see what you think about that title. So in this game, we're helping our friend Jet create the most awesome, silly, efficient robot to head to the Bortronian Robot Festival, okay? But first, we need to make this awesome robot, and we need to get through the galaxy in order to get to Bortron, which is the alien planet of our friend Jet here. So this is mission control. This is where you can play the levels that are on those different planets, but it's also where you can go and craft and build parts for your robot.
Anyone want to guess what planet we're on in this level? Yep, that's right, it's Mars. And you can see here that the robot is trying to travel through Mars, and we, as the user or player, are looking for gears or other resources to help craft robot parts for this robot. So you can see that the robot already has some claws and some tread wheels, and the more robot parts you craft, the more your left-hand toolbar over there grows. And as you progress through the game, the levels actually get harder and harder, and you also get really, really intense robot parts. Like, this is an example of some sonar ears, so the robot can have supersonic hearing.
So then, once you've collected a bunch of those parts, or a bunch of like the screws and the gears, then you head to the workshop, and you can use those to actually craft the different robot parts that you need. So here is a little moment of where we're actually crafting the sonar ears.
Okay, so let's do a quick poll. What do you guys think are the best legs I need to jump up on that ledge and grab the star? We have 3 legs over there. We have wheels, springs, and treads. Raise your hand if you guys think I need wheels. Okay, what about the springs? Treads? All right, you guys were right. It is the springs. So here are the springs in action, jumping up to collect the stars.
Good job. Okay, So now we know a little bit about the game, okay? So now let's talk about who helped make this game with us. Okay, so I want you to raise your hand if you think one person made this game. I want you to raise your hand if you think 10 people made this game. Now I want you to raise your hand if you think 20 or more people made this game. All right, cool. So let's get started. So first we have our coders and our engineers. They basically make the game behave the way that you want the game to behave. We have Lori, we have Mike, we have Jake. These are just a few of the engineers that have worked on this game. Now we also have the game designer and we have the game production manager. There's Allie and Todd. They help set the vision of the game, but also very importantly, they keep the game production on track so we actually get to a game that we can launch. Now these two and the engineers work really closely with the animators and the illustrators and the sound designers to help have the game look and also sound the way that we want it to look and sound. All right, so in the world of PBS, we hire game studios like this, and these guys are actually all from Australia, to help make the games for all of our PBS Kids shows. Because all of our games are played with our PBS Kids characters and in their worlds. And so we work directly with show creators. This is Craig Bartlett, who made the series Ready, Jet, Go. And also our digital producers, our show digital producers, here's Lynn, who work directly on the show, Ready, Jet, Go. And so we work with them to hire the right game studio to make these games so you all can play with the characters. Then from there, it's very important for us at PBS that we work with learning experts and curriculum experts that can help us really make sure that we're hitting our learning goals. So we work with astronomers, we work with researchers and directors, we work with teachers, we worked with our own learning specialists, and they review all the different builds that come in to make sure that we're hitting the mark on our learning goals. All right, so next, sometimes you work on a game where you want to be a little more innovative. You want to try something new, and we love doing that here at PBS. And so for this game, we call them our adaptive partners, and we're going to learn a little bit more about what that means later. And there's Ringen, and him and his team, they kind of go under the hood of the game and help with how the game progresses. All right. I think we're up to me now. So I work directly at PBS Kids, and I oversee all the game development for shows. That means I get to help with kind of the strategy. What kinds of games are we making for that show? When are we going to launch the games? And also, most importantly, since I oversee all the game development, I make sure that it's really fun and engaging for kids like you to play.
And that's me, and my role at PBS is to manage the playtesting program, which helps get the game into schools so that kids like you can test it, as well as help the rest of our digital content team with overall game production.
Also at PBS, we have had tech strategists, we have product managers, and we have learning scientists, like Cosimo over here, that help us with really cool analytics to see how the game is made, but they also develop the actual platforms, the code that helps launches the game. So when you go to a website and the game launches, they help make that happen. Who we got? All right. And so we also, once you have almost your final game, you have to test it on any device, anywhere and everywhere. And then also, now you have a game, what do you do with it? So we work with our awesome social media team. We have Candace and Veronica, and they help get the word out there about the game so that kids and parents and teachers play it. All right, one of the most important roles is kids, you guys. You guys help us make our games. Like Nita leads, we bring all of our games into schools so you all can test them and help us make it better. Okay, so without having to count all the bubbles, I think we have about 21 people here. So those that said 20 and over, high five. Yay. But there's actually a lot more people that help make this specific game. So it's actually more around 40 or more people have helped make this game.
All right, so the rest of our presentation, we're going to take you guys through our game making process. We've outlined it into 8 steps here. So we're going to start with imagine and plan, followed by design and doodle. We're going to talk about prototype and explain what that means a little bit more into our presentation. Playtest, which is a really cool part because it's where kids like you help us make our games along the way. Improve, alpha, QA, and lastly, launch.
Okay, so since we're talking about this one game that we're making, I'll tell you how it came to be. So PBS had a great opportunity with support from the Department of Education and the Corporation of Public Broadcasting to make a game with kids, having kids use their science and engineering skills. You guys use these skills every day. Anytime you observe something or you take a really close look, when you document, do you like document your lunch or something? Because maybe a look school, that's using a skill. Engineering, when you guys build something, when you write something, then you read it or test it and you improve it, right? Those are the skills that we wanted to do in a game. But because we're in a digital space, you get to play with things in a digital space you might not get to in the real world, right? So in this case, you get to build robots and control that robot on places like the moon.
All right, so let's talk about our first step in our process, which is imagine and plan. These are actual sketches from the Ready, Jet, Go episode that aired on TV that really was the inspiration for this game that we wanted to make. You can see here, this is the original sketch of the robot with a bunch of different robot parts, and he's trying to use those robot parts to maneuver across this crazy land. And we wanted to do our best to mimic that in the video game. So if you guys like to doodle or imagine or storytell, collaborate and brainstorm, this might be a part of game making that you guys would really, really love. So I want to talk a little bit about flexible thinking. Flexible thinking is kind of like creative problem solving, which is where you take a tool and you can think of many different ways to use that tool besides just the one way that you may automatically think of. So for example, a pipe cleaner. Pipe cleaners can be used for a bunch of different things, like arts and crafts. You can make animals, you can make a pencil holder, maybe a star, but you can also fold it up and make it into a little cleaner to get into little tiny instruments that are hard to get into. So really, you're just thinking of a lot of different ways to use this part. And we wanted to bring that same kind of thinking concept into this Ready, Jet, Go game.
So let's talk about design. There are a lot of aspects of designing a game, and I'm just going to talk through a few. So, like Nita said, we get all of our inspiration, all our games are based on our PBS Kids shows, right? So we kind of have the design of our characters, but we need to translate that into the digital space. So some of our shows might be 3D, but we might not be able to do something 3D or three-dimensional on the computer or in an app or a game. So we have to think about what those characters look like. You have to think about what they're wearing, the objects that they're interacting with. Every little tiny visual that you will see, designers have to think about that. So, if you all can see the tread outline? That looks so minor, but that's so important because you want to make sure that against the background, you can see the tread wheel, right? All right. Another thing to think about is you have to think where your game is going to be played. Right? So are you going to play it like a big kind of like a console game where you're on like a really big TV? Or is your game going to be more played on like a tiny phone or a tablet? And you have to make sure that every visual is really clear, even if you're playing on like a tiny phone. New devices come out all the time, right? There might be one called the iRing, right? Where you play a game as like a tiny ring. And you have to be able to see the game. So that's something that our designers are always thinking about. Another part of design is the animators, illustrators, designers get inspiration from the real world. It's really important for us at PBS Kids that we make sure, we're really representing the science. And we want to make sure that if you're driving through Mars, we are accurately showing you what Mars looks like. So here's a picture of a rover on Mars, and then here's what our Mars level looks like. You can see some similarities, right? You can see the rocky terrain, the red tint. But we had to make our level, the red, a bit more dramatic, right? So you know where your robot can jump. That's important. The obstacles, they need to stand out so that you know, hey, this is an obstacle. I need to figure out how to get through this. And lastly, not all design is kind of on the surface. There's level design. Lots of game studios and individual game makers have their own way of doing level design. Well, for our game studio created this tile-based system. Might be hard to see. Can you all see the dotted tiles there? Give me some nods. Yes, okay, cool. And so what this game does is that whenever the player is ready for a new level, the game will say, okay, I need tiles with this obstacle and this length and platforms this high. And it'll pull in those tiles from the tile library and serve up the level. What does this mean? It means that the computer is really generating the levels And it also means that we're not having to have long load times because we're reusing levels and assets. So it's really cool.
Okay, so now that we have our plan and we have our design in order, the next step is called prototype. And prototype is kind of like the first rough draft of a game. It's really, really basic, and you can see an example of a prototype here on the left-hand side. And you guys can probably notice that this looks a lot different than the first slide where you saw the finished game. And that's because we're not really worried about the look of the game yet. We're really just testing the basic mechanic. Like, how does the robot move? Are we going to drag him across the screen? Are we going to tap on 2 different buttons, maybe use some arrow keys? We're really just testing the basic functionality, and the pretty art, that can come later. And once we have a prototype, we get to do the really, really fun part, which is play testing. And that's a really, really crucial part of our game process, because that's where kids like you play our game. You guys are our main audience, so you have the game in your hands, and you tell us what you like, what you don't like. Is anything confusing or hard to use? Maybe even tell us what you want to see more of in the game. So when we get all those thoughts and ideas from you guys, we take them all and we share our results with our game producers, our digital producers, our developers, and we improve the game. We try to add all those thoughts in and try to make it better.
So remember when I walked through some of the advisors on this team? So our playtesting kids are like our advisors, right? So they're not necessarily making games, but they have an expertise, and that's being kids and loving games, and we use that. So think about that. That could be a way that you can get into game production too. Okay, now we go into alpha. And so alpha, we start to use some of those designs. We have our game flow. We kind of know like the start to the end, and that's a great thing to bring to kids. So you guys think like this is a good game flow. It makes you want to come back and play, or I'm like really understanding the goal here. But what I want to talk about is, remember I mentioned that word adaptive earlier? All right, so what does an adaptive game mean? Well, let's think. Whenever the weather's really cold outside, how do we adapt? Jacket, right. Okay, an hour later, it starts to rain. How do we adapt? Umbrella. Right. Okay, then that rain goes and it's so sunny. How do we adapt? Yeah, right? So you are changing on like the very specific needs. Okay, so an adaptive game changes based on how a single player plays the game. So let's give an example. So Nita and I are playing our game, and our penguin was, making sure we were doing it right. Okay, we both get to level 5. Here's my level 5. I have springs, I have pretty short platforms, and I'm really clearly struggling with what robot legs I need to go over these rocky terrains. It definitely took me a while to kind of investigate, kind of test it out, improve, right? So this is my level 5. Let's look at Nita's level 5. Whoa. Well, she has rocket booster legs because Nita kind of really understood that you needed the treads. She got the springs. And so her level 5, look at how high her platforms are, right? And then she gets to use these tools. So the game changes depending on how you as a single player plays through the game. One other thing just to note at Alpha, think about that's a really good time for the sound designer to come into play, because now that we kind of have the mechanics and we understand like the assets and what we're seeing. So imagine what kind of cool sound effect that rocket booster leg has.
And so after we have our alpha, does anyone want to guess what we do with the game again? No? Okay. You have a guess? All right. Yep, that's right. We do improve it. We take it back to play testing so that kids can take another look at it and tell us what they think a second time. And we pretty much just keep repeating this process until we have an almost ready game that's ready for launch. But there's one step left before we can launch this last draft of the game, and that's quality assurance testing, or we call it QA testing. And QA testing is where we take this game and we play it on a bunch of different devices, a bunch of different iPads, iPhones, Android tablets, computers, laptops, all these different devices, and we're looking for bugs in the game.
Bugs? What kind of bugs?
Okay, not bugs like this. In a game, a bug actually means a mistake or a glitch that isn't supposed to be there. So here's a picture of a bug in a game where the robot actually got stuck in some ice because the user jumped too high, and that's not supposed to happen. We want the user to be able to play through the whole game. So it's one person's job to play this game over and over again on all these different devices to try to find as many bugs as they can so we can share them with the developers and everyone else who needs to be involved in making the game so we can get rid of these mistakes or bugs.
And lastly, then we get to launch it. And that's for us at PBS Kids. This is what we do. We distribute content. We get it out there. And PBS Kids has many different channels where you can find games, right? So we have pbskids.org. We have a games app. We have the Ready to Go website. And then we have individual apps. So remember, we talked about Candace, our social media team. They're not really involved in the actual development of the game, but they're really involved in getting the word out there about it. And that's really important, because if you make a game, you want kids and teachers and parents to know about it and to play it. So, now it's your turn, right? The question I asked for you guys to be thinking about is what am I passionate about? What hobbies do I have? What could I do? What step, could I have been a part of in this game? So I hope you guys have been thinking about it, because there's a lot of different aspects of game production that you can be involved in that don't necessarily mean your main job is being a game developer.
Yeah, for example, if you guys like to tell stories, or if you like to doodle or draw or paint, maybe you like to listen to music or make music.
Yeah. Do you love to code? Do you love to figure things out? Do you love to multitask? We tend to do a lot of things at one time, and that could be really helpful, especially if you're managing a team that's working on all these different things.
Yeah, so think about your passions, because you never know when you'll be able to apply them and create a game.
Thank you. I think we have time. We have for like 2 or so questions. Does anyone have any questions for us? In the red, I think that's red, yeah. Have we launched our game yet? No, we have not launched it. We're actually in a beta phase right now, and you guys should go check out the PBS Kids table so you can play test it. And it's gonna come out in April. Yeah? All the way in the back with a pink shirt with the denim. Oh. We'll try and get another. Yeah, you first, and then we'll try, and then the in the red coat. Yes. And the best part is the question was, do you like making games? And I don't actually develop the games, but I love my job because I get to review all the different wonderful game concepts and alphas and betas. I play games as my job, and I get to review them, and then I get to provide feedback, based on what I've learned from going into play testing and just working on games for a while. So I love that part of my job. It's really fun. Okay, and then we have time for one more. In the red coat that's standing. Can someone help? What made us want to start this game? Cool. So we had a goal of working on games involving science and engineering. And the Ready, Jet, Go show already has like a science curriculum, and Jet solves a lot of problems using all his different engineering skills. And also, who doesn't want to make a robot and travel the solar system? So it was a perfect mix of taking that learning goal with also this wonderful show and its characters. And so that's why we thought it was a really good pair. All right, thank you.
That's the time we have. Everybody, I think most of you have time to go play some more games and to game test them and see what they're like. Let's give a final round of applause. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, everybody. We're back. How's it going so far today? You having fun? Great. Well, welcome to the Ed Games Expo. This is the 6th Ed Games Expo, if you can believe that. My name is Ed Metz from the U.S. Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences. And we're so glad you're here today. Just wanted to tell you that we have 130 learning games and technologies upstairs on the terrace level to be demoed today and tomorrow from 4 to 8. So in case you can come back out, if you don't get to try all 130, you can come back tomorrow maybe. So today, we wanted to give you guys a set of presentations called How the Game Was Made. And the idea is for our speakers to lead you through the process of developing the game from A to Z, including learning about all the different experts who were involved in the process. So our speaker here is Peter Solomon, and Peter has a PhD in physics. He started his company called The Beamer in order to bring his ideas for physics education and science education to life. And how many grandchildren does Peter have? Can we guess? Throw some numbers out there. 7. Peter has 12 grandchildren, and I believe they are in part the inspiration for Peter's company, The Beamer, and for the Stardust Mystery. Peter sent me a 100-page long book with his idea for the game that he's going to talk about today. That was about 5 years ago, right? So we're here now, 5 years later, to see what's going on. So Peter, thank you so much. Peter Solomon, and I'll give you the mic.
Okay. Thank you, Ed. And good morning, kids. So I'm going to tell you the name of the game is the Stardust Mystery, and we're going to talk a little bit about why it's a mystery. And the first thing is, well, okay. The first thing is the inspiration. How did this get started? And the way it gets started is with the birth of the 12th grandchild. And I'd always wanted to write a book, and it suddenly occurred to me that the book I wanted to write was a story book, an interesting book that you could read for the story, but you were learning about science while you were reading it. So that is the start of the Stardust Mystery. So there's the book. I started writing it. It took about a year, and then I started. Let me tell you about how does the proper use of grandchildren by the grandparent. There's 4 of them. The 4 of them are the models for the characters in the book. So I used their personalities and put them in the book. So the theme is the Stardust Mystery. And this is a true statement. We are made of stardust that was once in the body of Albert Einstein and the last T-Rex. Believe it or not, each one of you has trillions and trillions of carbon atoms that once were part of a T-Rex. And also, when you start feeling smart, trillions that were once part of Albert Einstein. And stardust is atoms. Those atoms were formed when stars exploded, so that's why it's called stardust. So in the book, and there are the four grandkids as characters, and poof, now they're the characters in the game. One of the things they invented was this wonderful virtual reality website in the book that allowed them to time travel anywhere they wanted, and when they time traveled, they could also talk to people in the place where they went. So for example, they could talk to Galileo in 1600 and learn about gravity. So the book was finished. I gave it to a whole bunch of kids to read, and they said, yeah, we like the book, but what we really want, we want this. We want the time travel website. So a proposal to the National Science Foundation. They, like the Department of Education, they are funding all kinds of interesting new technology to allow you kids to learn. And one of the things that they fund is games. And so we wrote a proposal, we won, and we started working on the game. And the first thing we did was to survey you kids to find out, well, what would you like in a game? And we asked the kids, would you play a learning game in your free time? Because that's what we want. We want you kids to play it and learn, not just in school, but at home. Well, 50% of the kids said, nah, we wouldn't want to play that. Then we asked, well, would you play if you could play with friends? 90% said yes. So, obviously, the game has to be a multiplayer game. So you can play at home with friends that are in different locations or maybe on a computer in the same house. And there are 4 players in the game, and they cooperate in learning about things and investigating things. And each one of the players has a different role on the cosmic egg, which is our time travel machine, and each of them has a set of tools that they can use in the game. So we were here 2 years ago when this Ed Games Expo got started, and the prototype game from the National Science Foundation actually tied for best learning game. So we're back now 2 years later with a much more finished game. And at the end of the phase 2, we wrote another proposal to the department, to National Science Foundation. We won $750,000 to go ahead and make the game. And we partnered up with the University of Connecticut to do this. So we started involving college kids to play this game, to make the game. And they were working as interns for us. And we had a professor, that's this guy over here. He was, this fellow, he was running the crew. This guy started with us, Jovan started with us when he was in high school, a sophomore. So we're involving kids in actually making the game. We now have 3 episodes of the Stardust Mystery going on. Actually, UConn Professor Thompson decided he didn't want to continue with us, so we have a game that is being developed under the direction of Robert McLeod. You can meet him upstairs. He is at Sacred Heart University, and Kaio Heng, who you can meet upstairs, is at Becker College, and they are supervising the development of the 3 games. These 2 universities, by the way, both are ranked by the Princeton Review as amongst the top 50 in the country, and in fact, Becker College is ranked as number 4 in the country. So here are the characters for the first episode of the game. This is going to be released in March, and it's called Mission KT. And the theme of the game is the players are going back to the era of the dinosaurs to find out how much carbon stardust that you have, that you got from that dinosaur. So here's Professor McLeod. On this side of the screen over here is an important thing in game development. It's called motion capture. You can actually have humans doing things like dancing or jumping or doing flips. Cameras catch the motion, and then we can take that motion and install that in the characters in the game. And on the other side of the screen are some team meetings designing the game and working on development. The other team is Half Full Nelson, and that is headed by Andrew Nelson. They're a professional game development team, and they're in charge of the basic core code for the game that allows us to have 4 players communicating over the internet. So here is what Mission KT looks like. We have an island. It's got a dinosaur, It's got a volcano. It's got a bunch of dinosaurs. Those are Parasaurolophus in the field. Here are titanosaurs, and we have a waterfall. So there are lots of cool places to explore in the game. One of the things I said each of the players has tools. One of the tools is time freeze. So Milo is time freezing a titanosaur as he bent down so we can use the titanosaur as a bridge to get across the river. Inherited carbon. When you use your tools on one of the dinosaurs, it tells you the inherited carbon. And look at that, 5,400 trillion carbon atoms that each of you has in your body. So when you're feeling kind of nasty and growly, that's all of those carbon atoms from the dinosaur. So you can also make a clone, and make the clone into a pet, and he'll follow you around. You can also do analysis, find out what carbon, what elements, what atoms are in these dinosaurs. So VC, that's one of the grandkids, is going to do an analysis. So the first thing she has to do is bring up her tool wheel and move it from teleport over to analysis. And now the analysis shows up on the screen. There's a periodic table, and there's a place for bar graphs. And when she points at one of the Parasaurolophus, she gets the analysis, what kinds of elements make up that animal. And she can compare that to trees and rocks and human beings and find out about all of the building blocks that are used to make all of the things in our world. You can take photographs. You can collect things. You can pick them up and load them in a box and send them back to the Cosmic Egg time machine. And here's the cast of characters. And we decided sometimes kids want to play with their parents. Well, that's sometimes. Sometimes they want to play with their grandparents. So we put into the game, we put some adult-looking characters in case you want to play with your grandparents. So that's the Mission KT. The other game that we have upstairs is Building the Universe, and there are the characters of the game, same characters. And there's the Building the Universe team, Kyo Hang in the center, and on his right is David Neer. David is the assistant producer. He's upstairs too. And in this game, what we're doing is starting from the Big Bang, starting when the universe started with quarks. That was all that was there at the beginning. Some tiny little particles called quarks and some tiny electrons. And what you do in this game is you start with the quarks and you build the whole universe. So first thing you have to do is use the time machine to pick the time and the place. So we're going to pick the time as the Big Bang, the place is the center of the universe, and then she has to change her size so that we can pick up the quarks, which are tiny, 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 tiny. And so she changes the scale to be quark scale, and then there are the quarks. And if you come upstairs, you can play this game, catching quarks that we're going to use to build our universe. Then there's some sort of a diagram, a set of instructions on what you do. You have to assemble the quarks to make bigger particles. And to do that, you go to the cosmic market, you buy some equipment, and then you install the equipment in your assembly sphere, put the quarks in, and if you've put the right number of quarks in of the right color and the right up and down, poof, you get a proton or a neutron, and then you can put those together and make atoms. And once you have atoms, you can start building stars. When we had the first atoms that were formed in the Big Bang were hydrogen and helium, and that is what stars are made, the first stars are made of. And here is Milo on his hoverboard wandering around collecting big pieces of junk to make a planet. There are now 2 books, additional books being written besides the Stardust Mystery, one to go with each one of the games. So each game is going to have a book. And then finally, if you have a game, you can make videos. You can have the characters in the game do things and have them talk and to make a video. So if you would play the video, please.
Question time with the Cosmic Kids.
Well, there we go. So this is about how big are my atoms? And there
Hey,
are 2
Johari,
characters.
how big are my atoms?
They are really tiny, way smaller than one of these sand grains that's here on the beach.
That's Johari.
Let's see how big you would
and
be
Milo.
if all your atoms were the size of sand grains.
So she says, let's make your atoms the size
This
of
feels
sand grains.
strange.
And look what happens to Milo when his atoms become
Wow,
the size of
look
sand
at you now.
grains.
You are huge.
I'm liking
And how
this.
big is he going to get?
Wow,
Well,
I'm
that's
as
how
big as
tiny your
planet
atoms
Earth.
are. If you exchange your
That is
atoms for
because
tiny sand
are
grains,
like 6
that's how
million
big
times
you'd
bigger
be.
than atoms.
Okay, that's it. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks a lot, Peter. Really,
welcome.
really exciting.
Did I make the time?
Oh, you were, it was perfection. What's your question over there? So is this a board game or like a computer game?
This is a computer game. It's played with a PC or a Mac. Eventually, we will have the game that'll play on tablets and Chromebooks.
Great, what about you in the front row? Yeah. Are you working on any new games?
Well, we're working on different episodes. There is going to be an episode where you tour your body and shrink in size to find out what could be stardust. What is it, and its atoms, what could be stable enough that could survive on a star and be produced by a star? And so you have to go in your body and you get smaller and you go to the cells, you go to the DNA, and even the DNA comes apart. The thing that doesn't come apart when you subject it to temperature are the atoms.
Okay, one more question. The girl in the pink jacket. Is it on the App Store or Google? How do they find it?
It's going to be released in March. It will be on Steam. We are talking to Microsoft to have it on the Microsoft Store, and it'll eventually be on Amazon.
Great question. Well, thanks so much, Peter. And I know a lot of you are leaving now, but for those of you staying, Peter will be upstairs to try out the game with you guys right there. So thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. You're a great audience.
Okay, everybody, thanks so much. We'll be back in a few more minutes with another talk, and look forward to seeing you upstairs.
Hi. How we all doing? Good? Is it good to be here and not in school? A little round of applause. Thank you for your teachers for letting you come. Pretty awesome. And you're going to spend, I guess you're going to be with us for a few minutes hearing about a cool company that makes games. And then you're going to get to go upstairs and play some games. Have you played anything yet today? No. Well, a little? Well, at home, that doesn't count. Fortnite before you go to school doesn't count. But this afternoon, you're going to be able to play, I think they have like 135 games upstairs. You can play really cool stuff. I even saw Rocksmith up there. I saw Assassin's Creed, Ancient Egypt up there. So there's some really cool games that you know about and some new games that you have never heard of but are also super fun. So I am Susanna Pollack. I am president of an organization called Games for Change. And so what we do at my company is that we help promote this idea that games have a power beyond entertainment. So besides playing Minecraft and Fortnite and all the other games you like to play at home, that games can be used to teach people things, to maybe change behavior. Maybe games can help someone from being kinder to other people. Games can help teach you about climate change. Games can be used to help teach you about math, right, or social studies, and maybe even make you smarter. There are even games out there that are being tested to help you with ADHD, right? Like really cool stuff. So this is what you're learning about today, and hopefully games can be brought into your classrooms in some way, shape, or another. So I'm here to introduce a really cool guy named Devin Young. He is president of a company called ClassCraft, and they make games that make your classroom experience really fun and help you learn and work with your fellow students and friends better. So I'm going to introduce you to Devin. Here he is. Devin, why don't you come on stage? Really great guy. Give him a round of applause. You can have fun with him.
Thank you so much. Hi, guys. How's it going? Good, cool. My name is Devin, and I work on this company called ClassCraft with a bunch of other awesome people. And basically the reason that we do this is because school wasn't fun for us. Had kind of a hard time in school, found it a bit boring, got picked on a bit, and basically we started thinking about how school could be better and if we turn the experience of going to school into a game, right? So when you think about all kinds of problems that are happening in school, basically, if you don't want to be there, if students don't want to have fun and show up, then a lot of those other things don't really move in a positive direction, right? So things like grades or social emotional development, which is something that's really important to teachers and parents. And so what we're doing is turning your school year into a game. So you have a character. And every day when you go to school, you get experience points in all your different classes. You're in teams. You get to be mages, warriors, healers. As you level up, you get powers that let you hand in homework late or maybe sit next to someone you like or maybe listen to music while you're doing an assignment. And so the game is real. Your classroom becomes a game, okay? So I'm going to play a little video, basically, that's going to show you how this works, but there's a bunch of different apps, right, that feed into your character, so you're getting points as you're kind of doing homework or as you're working with people in class. And so to give you an idea of what that looks like, let's see if we can get this going. Can we go to the next slide? Dun, dun, dun. Suspense. Oh, there you go. So we went to a bunch of schools outside of Chicago, and this is a middle school, and they're playing what's called a boss battle. So different teams are having to answer questions, and if you get the answers right, then you beat this boss, and everybody gets points. It's really fun. This is a science class where they're using their textbooks, and they're doing stuff around fossils and learning how they work. And the teacher's giving points as they walk around the room and see people getting answers right and helping each other out. And so over the day, you're getting these points in all these different kind of ways. And then at the end of class, your character levels up and you get points and powers at the end of the day. And then we have schools where they really took the idea. Has anybody seen Harry Potter before? You guys know in Hogwarts, there's these different schools, right? Like Gryffindor Well, this is a school in Spain where they use ClassCraft to turn their school into Hogwarts. So there's teams in all the different grades, and they're doing dance-off competitions in the gym. And so their characters come with them week over week, and then at certain points during the year, they have these huge sort of competitions. And so ClassCraft can be used in a bunch of different ways. I'm going to go to the next slide, please. There you go. So today we're here to talk to you a little bit about how we make ClassCraft. So this is our leadership team, and I'm on that team. And I happen to work at ClassCraft with my brother and my dad, which is kind of crazy, but that's actually how it works. My brother taught for 10 years, and this is something that came out of his classes, and we worked together making a lot of websites for about 10 years prior to ClassCraft starting. And so we built a lot of apps. We worked with a lot of companies like Microsoft and Intel. And then this idea that he had in his classroom about turning it into a game was something that he tested out. And it ended up working really well. And then he told a bunch of teachers online. And then we started the company. And so a couple months into it, we brought on our dad. And now we have all these people that are helping us build it. So we have this woman, Kimberly Harrington, who is the Commissioner of Education for the state of New Jersey till recently. Connie Yao, who's also someone who works a lot in gaming and education and has helped a lot of projects get funded. And then we have Jean Gadon. Has anybody heard of Assassin's Creed? Maybe. It's like a pretty big game. The person who's responsible for managing the whole game is this guy, Jean Gadon. So he's been helping us. And then we have some researchers as well that are helping us understand how to use these gaming principles in the classroom in a better way. So we have some really smart people that we're working with that are helping us design the system. And then we have a bunch of other teams, and I wanted to sort of talk to you about them today. So we have a design team. So at ClassCraft, you can be a designer. And that means that you've studied graphic design and Photoshop. And so when we work with the designers, we think about how the application is going to work, right? So there's a bunch of different screens where you get your points and you use your powers. And this is that boss battle screen on the left there, or I guess on your right. And so what we do in that process is we, let's see if I can get the slide to change. There you go. We think a lot. We have a lot of conversations about how should it work. And so we do what's called whiteboarding, right? We do some wireframes. We draw how this screen should go to the next one and how it should all kind of come together. And then we map it out on the computer. And then once we know exactly what we're building, we start actually making sketches on the computer. So it's really kind of just putting boxes in place of where things would go. And once we kind of look at those and make sure that they're all set up properly, then we actually design them, right? So we make these interactive prototypes where you can kind of click and it goes to another screen, and you kind of get a sense of how it's going to work. And so designers are really using their critical thinking to look at the user experience, what the player is going to go through when they play the game, and then see how to design it basically in the best way possible. And then from there, we have an illustration team, and so they make all the artwork. We have 3 people on our team right now, and we're going to show you a video actually about how we make the art at ClassCraft.
Hello, my name is Jianli Wu, and I'm the lead concept artist and illustrator at ClassCraft. I started my career studying at Emily Carr University of Art and Design, and I've been a professional illustrator for the last 8 years. I've worked at companies like Electronic Arts, Ubisoft, and THQ. At ClassCraft, I work closely with Devin Young, our co-founder and chief creative officer, to develop the look and the feel of the game. Today, we're going to show you how we created our latest character, the psionic mage, Frey. When we create any new character, we start by doing research and gathering images as references to hone in on who the character will be. It's important that each one stands out from the rest. We also take time to make sure they work in context with the world and the rest of the characters we have created. For Frey, we wanted to make something that felt mysterious and ephemeral. During our research, we discovered fashion designer Zach Posen's LED dress, which became one of our main inspirations. The dress features LED lights and was coded using animations created by girls from all around the world as part of Google's Made with Code initiative. The loose fabric has a floaty, glowing appearance that represents the transformative quality we were looking for. Once we have the visual inspiration down, we start by making different thumbnails of how the character could look. These are usually small images in black and white, with just enough detail to demonstrate the overall silhouette and the major design elements. Then we pick and choose parts that we like from the thumbnails. For example, we might decide to use the head of one thumbnail and the armor from another. Once we have the design locked in, we then transfer the final concept onto the base template for the mage. Since all the characters in ClassCraft wear different armor pieces that students can mix and match together, we need to make sure that the design is built on the same frame and is compatible with the other characters in that class. When the design is on the canvas, we can then start going more in depth, exploring secondary design components and color themes. For the mages, a big deciding factor is the energy that is connected to their hands, since it's so front and center. We also try to give each set of armor its own color theme to make sure it looks distinct from all the others. At that point, we've made most of the big decisions, and we can start rendering. This is where we bring the image from a basic sketch to the final product. This stage is less about design and more about making the character look and feel more three-dimensional. It's also where the bulk of the work actually happens. Each character consists of many different pieces like pants, boots, energy, masks, and so on. As a result, the final renders are pretty complex. To give you an idea, it can take about 2 to 3 weeks to complete just one character. The creative process is also hard to predict. It can be challenging to identify whether something will work or not until you are actually seeing it on the screen. Sometimes Devin and I decide to change the designs if we feel it's not working out. At the end, we refine the character and polish smaller details, making a line smoother here or moving another part up to make sure the final design is as good as it can be. And that's how we created Frey, who is now being added to the ClassCraft and who you will be able to unlock as you progress in your classes. We've just completed 18 sets for each character. There are literally millions of different combinations you can make using all the different pieces. We hope you enjoy mixing and matching them and creating the avatar that is uniquely you.
So that's how we make art at ClassCraft. How was that? You guys find that cool? Cool. It's really fun. So the illustration team also works. Maybe move on the other side. There you go. There you go. So in ClassCraft, we have this feature where you can take your assignments and they become quests. And so as you finish homework, it unlocks other homework and other exercises that you can do. And for that, we've created a marketplace where there's all kinds of quests that you can do with your teacher. And so the illustrators use their skills to make maps. So this is one of the maps in ClassCraft. And so there's all these different locations, and then we write stories about those different places. And so this is one of the towns where you can kind of go in the buildings and stuff. This is where the warriors are. And so there's backgrounds that go with it. So there's a lot of art in ClassCraft that really kind of brings the world alive. They're also responsible for designing like pets and monsters. Here's some slides from the stories. So there's a lot there that the illustration team kind of brings to the project. But it wouldn't have a place to live if the designers didn't make the apps and the websites and everything else where this stuff works. So behind all that, so once you design everything, you actually need to build it. And these are the people that build it. So we have developers at ClassCraft that do a lot of the coding. And this is what, I don't know, has anybody here done a coding class before or anything related to coding? Cool, there's a few of you in there, and that's awesome. So this is what that looks like when you become a grown-up and you become a coder. And so a lot of the conversations are around problem solving, how to build some of the things, and trying to figure out what the limitations are with the internet and the apps and the browsers and stuff like that. And so, so it's a really fun job. It's very logical. And then there's other jobs at ClassCraft that kind of support what we're doing. So once you have a game in place, you have people that are with marketing and communications, and so they're the people that help us get the word out about ClassCraft, and so they help us build ad campaigns or flyers, or we have a blog that we do where we report on other games, we review games, and so there's a ton of stuff there. If you're really interested in this stuff, I'd encourage you to check out classcraft.com/blog. And you can learn about all kinds of cool games in education that you could do while you're in school. And so that's who's on our marketing and communication team. There's also, we do media relationships, so reaching out to reporters and stuff like that. And we have someone on our team, Barbara, who's here with us today, who does that, and she's really amazing. So we're really glad to have her on that team. And then we have a learning and community team, and this helps teachers learn how to use ClassCraft in their schools. And so these folks are going to schools and they're doing trainings online to support teachers so that they're really used to using it. And then we have a partnership team that actually goes out and works with schools to get it going. And so they go to conferences, they travel a lot. And so as you can see within the team, there's a lot of different people making this happen. And there's a chunk of folks that are really working on the game and making it as best as possible, and then a whole bunch of other people that are reaching out and meeting people. And so within our team, you can look at what you're most drawn to. Maybe it's drawing, or maybe it's talking to people, or programming, and you could see where your interest could bring you to a job within a gaming studio. So I'm just going to wrap up. If you want to know more about us, there's classcraft.com, and then there's Facebook and Twitter if you want to follow us there, where you can learn more about what we're doing. Thanks,
Great.
guys.
Thank you, Devin. Don't go away just yet.
Sure.
All right. Also, want to give him a round of applause. Really cool stuff. How fun would it be to have this in your classroom? So we have time for maybe one or two questions before we're going to send you upstairs to start playing with games. Anyone have any questions for Devin? Yep, one right over there. Yep. Why don't you talk loudly? Say who you are and what school you're from. Great.
Cool.
And what's your question?
Oh, the illustrator worked at Ubisoft before, and then after that came and worked with us. And so we have a lot of people that work on bigger titles and things like that, and then they get really excited about actually making games for school. And so they reach out, and then they end up working with us after that. Great question.
Yep, here in blue. Your name and what school?
We're going to be upstairs. Yeah, we can show you how it works. We're going to be setting up right after this.
Do you know the booth number?
73, I think. Yeah.
All right, great. One more? All right, you guys seem very excited to get upstairs, so we're going to let you go, but thank you, Devin.
Thank you so much.
All right, have a good time. Bye.
Sorry about the delay. We're going to get going now. My name is Ed Metz from the Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences. And are you guys from DC schools, I'm assuming? Yeah. Wonderful. And then you're never going to believe it, but we're also simulcasting live on the Kennedy Center's website through YouTube. So viewers are watching around the country and the world. So that's pretty exciting. So have you guys been upstairs yet? How's it going? Okay. So thanks to the Kennedy Center for hosting us. They're hosting the Ed Games Expo to highlight the creativity and the arts in the design and development of learning games and technologies. And part of that is giving you guys an experience where you can see how the game was made and see all the different parts of that process. And in your own lives and educations, going back to school, maybe thinking about different roles that you'd like to play in developing a game. So our next talk is from MidSchooMath, and we have Scott Laidlaw and Megan.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
And MidSchooMath, Scott it's an incredible story. Scott was a teacher for 15 years, right? And his students asked, Scott had a lot of ideas for making the classroom more exciting and connecting students to math in new ways. And the students used to ask Scott, can we play the game, right? The only problem is, I guess they could have played the game, but they could only play it in that classroom. They wouldn't be able to play it around the country. So Scott said, I need to start developing some technology games so that they can be used around the country. And Scott's created a game called Empires, which puts math learning in the context of a history game. And it's you're going to learn about it. So thanks for coming out, you guys. Look forward to hearing how the game was made.
Thank you.
Okay, how the game was made. My name's Scott. Thanks for letting us be here. You have a task. I'm going to go ahead and give you a task. So Tom plants corn in 0.4 of his vegetable garden. Of the corn section, 0.75 is early sweet corn, and the rest is later maturing sweet corn. What part of his garden does Tom plant in early corn? What part does he plant in late corn? Tom's garden covers 8 acres. How many acres of early corn does he have? How many acres of late corn does he have? Your task is not to solve that problem.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. I just want you to answer a couple of questions. What's right about this question? What's wrong about it? And the last part to it is who or what person wrote this question. I want you to give them a name. I want you to talk to your person next to you. And I want you to tell them, is it a guy named Dave who was chained to a chair because a publishing company made him do it? Why in the world did that question get made and who made it? Talk to the person next to you. Take 1 minute. Go.
What's good about the question? What's not so good about the question? And who do you think made this? And why do you think that kind of person would make that question?
Okay, quick shout out. What's right about the question? Anything? Anybody? Anything about what's right about it?
Or good about it? What's like, yeah, that's good about it?
What's that? What's wrong with it? What's wrong with that question? Too many questions. That's one thing. Anything else? Yeah, did anybody also believe whether Tom was actually going to plant 0.4 of his vegetable garden? Can you imagine Tom? I can't imagine him doing that. So how about the person who wrote it? We're going to come back to that in a second. Megan is going to share a different way of looking at that kind of math.
All right, so if you didn't realize that that question was about area, well, it is. We're going to let you look, though, at a different question about area, and I want you to think about how it's different than the one you just saw. Roll video. Thank you.
Ah, Provident, you've returned. Join us. The council has been discussing how to best provide shelter for our growing population.
Come back here and eat your vegetables.
Our tents are overflowing with babies and new families. We're bursting at the seams, and the people are ready for a change. The council thinks it's time to let go of the tents of our ancestors and build permanent brick homes.
Yeah! Brick homes, brick homes, brick homes, brick homes.
We could become a prosperous town with many allies.
Why, yes! And perhaps one day, even a grand city-state with great walls and flowing waters, inspiring temples of learning and... Slow down, Saul. First things first. Tell the Provident about the brick shortage. Ah, yes, housing. The first step is to build housing of all types and sizes. But those houses will need bricks, Provident. Onk tells us that bricks are in high demand for many different projects. We must plan very carefully and not waste a single brick. Every brick counts.
Every brick counts. Every brick counts. Every brick counts.
Provident, please take a look at these numbers. Families need a certain amount of square footage, while individuals need a different amount. This is overwhelming. Please help us make a plan, Provident. How much square footage of housing is needed for our population?
Every brick counts. Come on. Every brick counts. Stand up.
Every brick counts.
Every brick counts. Oh, yeah.
Every brick counts.
Every brick counts. Okay. Woo! Yes, it does. Every brick counts. That was good, you guys. That was just a little slice of the multiplayer game that's based on 7th grade standards that Ed was talking about, that Scott built even before I came on the team. It's called Empires. We released it in 2015. Scott's going to talk a little bit more about it.
Okay, Empires. This is a conference that we host. This is a conference that we host, and so I talk to this group of people every year when we do that. And one year in 2015, we thought Empires was such a cool product that we actually made a lunchbox for it, if you can get the clicker to go. There we go. So we actually had a lunchbox made for it, so everybody in the audience got one. And the whole idea of it is that math is pretty, kind of boring sometimes. Tom is not going to plant 0.4 of his vegetable garden. So the thing is what we're trying to do is we're trying to transform how we teach it. We're trying to move from this to something like that. Not really the lunch box, it's a metaphor for, anyway, you get the idea of it. The question is, how do we get from here to there? And I can't do it by myself. I've got to do that with a team. And so the very first thing that you need is a really good artist. This is a dear friend of mine. Her name is Elizabeth Hadel, and all she does is draw. She is in such high demand that I can't even get her to hire her for her work because she charges so much money now. And all she does is draw pictures all day long for graphic novels and for video games and that sort of thing. And she says, I maintain the wild when I draw. That's what I do.
Another person on our team, this is Michael, and he is our animator. And what he does is he takes all those drawings that Beth gives him on paper, and he actually turns them into the cartoons that were moving like this, makes their mouth move. He's the one that makes all of that happen. And it doesn't just happen the first time. He makes a version and then he sends it to me. And I say, nope, Michael, you got to do this. You got to make him lean more. You got to bring his hand up. I give him all of these edits to make. He calls those mosquito hairs. And if he were here today, he would say, I comb mosquito hairs.
When we call Michael, he goes, I'm over here combing mosquito hairs. That's all I'm doing. So this is Kate. Kate is an actress. She's a voice actor, and she also does video editing. When we hired her, she said that she knew how to do video editing. Well, guess what? She actually didn't. And she had to work really, really, really hard behind the scenes late at night trying to figure out how to do it. She ends up becoming one of the best people that we have on the team. That's Kate. And she says, I've got mad skills.
Next person on our team, this is Michelle. She is our scriptwriter, and she's also a sound engineer. So first of all, have you ever tried to watch a movie without sound? Anybody? Turn the sound down? If you haven't, go home and try it, especially a scary one. You're like, what am I doing? It makes no sense. The movie's not even good. So sound is super important. Michelle's the person that does that. And she also writes our script. So that every brick counts, that was her. And if she were here today, she would say, I got you to chant, every brick counts.
We were wondering if anybody at all would chant. We were like, oh no, it's gonna be so lame if not even one person does.
You
Thanks
guys
for
did pretty
standing up
good.
in the back. Thank you. Shout out. This guy, he's a game designer. He's the guy that I actually started working with when we began all this sort of thing. And he says, hey, you need to have a mad scientist on your team. And that's what he does. He and I actually used to have, we were trying to do an Old West game. And so we had mail delivered to the school on a live horse with a person riding it to do that. So we're trying to build an immersion for kids.
All right, here's the guy that puts it all together and makes it all happen. He's the guy that makes the big bucks. He is our programmer. His name is Ken Moore. He takes everything that's laid out. He takes the cartoons that Michael has animated, that Beth has drawn. He takes the scripts that Michelle has written. He takes the backgrounds and the game problems that Todd has designed, and he makes everything work sitting at his computer, and all he does is script code to make it all happen. He gets so mad at us. He's like, you guys, that's not possible. I can't do it. And then he calls us tomorrow, and he's like, oh, okay, it's done. And if he were here today, he would say, my life is hell, and I love it.
Ken Moore hunts bears with bows and arrows. I'm not saying that's a good thing to do. I don't know that that's good, but he hunts them, and then he eats the bears. So this is Jennifer Lightwood. She's a chief financial officer. You need one of these people on your team. She works with money. And she would say this if she were here: if you think my job's not all that important for building a game, you should try doing it without me. It is really hard to build these things without money. We're going to come back to money in just a minute.
All right, almost there. Another team member of ours, she's a school consultant. This is Gladys, and if you met her, y'all, you would love her as much as we do. She's the one that helps us work with schools and reach out to teachers. And I want you to just imagine this. This is Gladys. If you're in a room ever with somebody who made you feel like it's possible to do anything, that's Gladys. And if she were here today, she would say, it takes some big thinking to make sure your game doesn't live in a vacuum.
This is Kevin Simpson. He has lived in Dubai, South America, Thailand. He travels all over the world, and he does that as a global education consultant. He gets paid a lot of money because he shares ideas from one place to the next. Kevin not only just looks good, he also says, hey, you want some hype, you call me. He's one of our big conference presenters. So those are some of the people on the team. It's not all of them, but it is a large portion of them. So start with a simple idea. How do you build a game? You start with a simple idea. You press the button. You build a good team. And then the last part to it is that you go and get your funding. Dr. Ed Metz is a person who is in the room, and he is a person who has helped build a program that funds games to go into education or that can support education. And so he's a really special person who's here. So if you want to, you might want to write down Dr. Edward Metz is one of the people to go to. The question is, if you want to go and get money, how do you do that? There's a lot of things about that, and I could do a whole presentation on it. But the one thing I want to say is don't start with, hey, I want you to open your checkbook, because it doesn't really work very well. Instead, start with a simple story. This is a true story. I had a teacher who called me, and he said, Scott, I'm just going to tell you what just happened over the phone. He said, there was a kid who just played Empires yesterday, and now he came back to school today, and he was on the playground, and he says, the student broke his arm on the playground. He goes, I don't just mean a small break. It was just kind of hanging there. It was a compound fracture. True story. And this kid said to his parents, so the teacher has them, and they say, hey, call your parents so you can go to the hospital. We'll meet you over there. And the kid says to his parents, hey, can you wait to go there at 10 a.m. after math class? It's a true story. We wrote that as the very first few lines to a grant that we applied for the Department of Education. And about 6 to 8 months later, we won $1 million for building the game that you saw. Thank you guys for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. I don't know if anyone has a question real fast. I think they said we could ask a question or two if you got them. All right, y'all, come see us upstairs if you get to go back. I'm not sure, but Empires, you can come play.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Make some noise if you have two hands. Give yourself a round of applause. It's good to see you. Now, what high schools do I have in today? I know we have Woodson. I can't hear you. Benjamin Banneker? Did I hear Banneker? Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, the very fact that you guys are here shows your commitment to really getting a sense and understanding of what cool innovations that are happening that makes learning fun and engaging. So I'm excited to meet some of you and have you learn from some of these neat products. My name is Nasir Qadri. I am the Associate Director of Social Investments at AT&T Foundation. I'm really excited to be here at the 6th Annual Gaming Expo. I want to give my friend Ed Metz a round of applause. All of us should, actually. Thanks, Ed, for your leadership, for making this happen and bringing us all together. At AT&T, and the crux of my work is to find, develop, and invest in really interesting education technology tools that makes for you learning fun and making sure that learning, you're engaged in your learning, and of course, increasing your student achievement with hopes that we're bridging the skills gap between education and employment. So I'm excited to be on the cusp and looking at the next wave of innovative tools that's making learning fun and engaging for students across the country. So I'm here to actually introduce our next education entrepreneur. Victoria Van Voorhis is the founder and CEO of Second Avenue Software, and an award-winning studio that has been producing educational learning games for over a decade. Second Avenue Science Games have over 30 million plays in more than 30 countries. Victoria has developed games in part with support of grants from Department of Education and the National Science Foundation. Victoria is also a mother of 4 and a former teacher. So Victoria's going to come up and speak about her venture, and afterwards we'll have time for a Q&A. All right, Victoria?
Thank you very much for that gracious introduction. Ed, once again, thank you for having Second Avenue here. We're really excited to be here. We love actually getting to get all the feedback from all of you on the games that we build. We've got 3 of them upstairs this year, so make sure you check them out if you're going to get to go back upstairs. So I'm a mother of 4, so I know that you don't always do your homework. How many of you do your homework every single night? For real? Every single night, all of it? Very good, very good. Now, how many of you love math? Put your hands up. Awesome. How many of you love to draw? Fantastic. Who loves English class? Come on, it can't be that bad. All right. Who plays a team sport? Awesome. All right, so here's some real, and who likes music? To produce it? Lots of hands, awesome. Who plays an instrument? Great. And who loves to beatbox and make crazy noises? Excellent. That means that there's a job for you in the video game industry. So Second Avenue is actually a metaphor for an alternate path to learning, because I used to be a classroom teacher, and I would see all of y'all's eyes rolling back in your head and the drool starting to come out when we used traditional methods of teaching. And so my inspiration for starting the company was actually to take the power of digital and create new ways for kids to learn. And one of the best ways to do that is through the power of play. How do we do it? Well, as a teacher, the first thing I have to think about is the learning objective. What do we need you guys to know? That sounds pretty boring, right? But then we get to the fun stuff. We have to bring in the creative team, the design team, the engineering team, and the testing team. And we're going to talk about all of those different roles today. All right, so this is art. Can you all see that, or is it kind of faded out because of the lights? So this is our character, Martha Madison, and she started out as a sketch. And we actually tested her with kids from all over the country. We talked to urban kids and rural kids and suburban kids, and we asked them about their current game art, and we showed them a bunch of different characters, and this is the character that they loved best. And now, next, when she goes from being that sketch into a video game, can you guys see that? Do you see all those little triangles? Those are called polys. And that's how you actually have to understand math in 3 dimensions and art to create this 3-dimensional character who's going to move through your landscape. And we've got a couple of really great people in the creative team. Susan Kolodny is our creative director. She's been with us for over 10 years. And Steve Jacobs is a professor of game design at RIT. And he actually consults with us on narrative and game design and level design, because games are no fun if they don't have a good story, right? Who plays a game with no story? I want to see a hand. Okay, which game has no story? All right, but you know, you got the dance thing happening. That's a little bit of a story. Yep. What's another one? Minecraft, you get to make your own story, right? Or if you play in if you play in the mode where you can get eaten, you have to survive. If you play in survival mode rather than in creative. Yep. Rainbow Six Siege? I don't know that one. No story at all? Like, I play Tetris and my kids tease me because there's really no story there. All right. So Professor Jacobs helps us with the story writing and the narrative arc. Susan helps lead the whole design team in terms of creating the storyboards and the art look and feel for a game. And we also have musicians and Foley artists that make all the noise. So this is what level design. So we'll have an artist sketch out a level. And then we have kids like you play the game on paper before we actually turn it into code. And it starts to look something like this. And then this is Brian Regan. He's our lead game producer. And under him, the design team works. And we have learning design, so that when we design a game, the game actually has to teach you something. You have to learn, you have to explore, you have to do, right? And then we have a game designer, because it's not a game if you can't win and it can't be fun and you can't fail and you can't try again. And then we have UI and UX designers. What does UI and UX stand for? Anybody? User interface and user experience. Who's ever used a piece of software where you can't tell what button to click? Right? Pretty boring, pretty awful, pretty frustrating. So the people that think about how to make that better are called UI, UX engineers, and they have a really important job. It's sort of like being an architect, but for software. And then we have these things called subject matter experts. So who totally loves physics? 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Or biology. Anybody? Okay. So what we need to do when we're building a game is we work with subject matter experts and teachers to make sure that everything in our game is absolutely accurate, because we don't want to give you guys any misconceptions. All right. And things go from there to here, and now you get to do all sorts of cool stuff, right? Anybody know what that was? PE and KE? Who's done it? Yes? What is it? Potential energy and kinetic energy. Very good. Can you imagine if you'd learned about that in a video game instead of like on a diagram? I don't think I'm getting, okay, so in this next slide, now that we can see Stan is our lead software engineer. He actually is also a really good football player and went to school for bioengineering and taught himself how to code. And now he codes like a boss in Unity. And what's amazing is that in order to do all of this, you have to collaborate. And that's why I asked you at the beginning, who plays team sports, right? Or who's in orchestra or band? Because one of the things that you have to know about building a game is that you have to blend talents from all different categories together to create a game. And so you need to have somebody who's amazing at drawing, amazing at music, amazing at coding, and you all have to work together seamlessly to make that happen. So that's where all those team sport skills are super important, or learning how to blend your voice in an orchestra or a band. All right, now this next one sounds kind of boring, right? Can we get it? Testing. And that's Sven. Sven is our lead QA engineer. He's also an accessibility expert, which means that we try and make things work for people who are low vision or who are hard of hearing. But testing is a really important function of video game development for schools, right, for education. So we have researchers that we work with that validate whether or not the game actually teaches. So we'll go out and we'll do these things called randomized control trials to make sure that we actually can improve your learning outcomes. And guess what? With Martha, we can by a full letter grade after 20 minutes of playing. Not bad, just saying. Quality assurance, can't crash, must work every time. And it has to work on a bazillion different browsers and a bazillion different platforms in schools with really limited Wi-Fi where you're sipping data through a cocktail straw. That's not so much fun, so we have to make our games make sure they work in that kind of environment. And then, because your data is super important, we need to have somebody who's a cybersecurity expert try and hack all of our games and all of our dashboards to make sure that your data is protected. So those are the different functions of what we do at Second Avenue Learning to make games fun and creative, and we know that they work. So I'm just going to say thank you. And Martha Madison was funded in part from the National Science Foundation. Do you guys have any questions? Not a single question. Really? Yes. You can get Martha Madison in Steam. We also get it into schools for really, really low cost. And if you want to be part of our Game Changers program, where you get to beta test software for free, you can go to our website, secondavenuelearning.com, and click on the Game Changers thing at the top, and then you get access to all our pre-releases, and you can play them and tell us whether or not they work. Yes? Can you say your question again? No, can you stand up and say your question loudly? Yes, when you start building a game, we actually do start with words and letters. We have a whole narrative arc. We describe the characters. We do something called storyboarding, where we'll sketch and we'll describe what's happening. And then we do something called paper play testing, and we bring kids in to test. And then when we do the next round of design and we actually have wireframes, we bring kids in to test. And then when we're ready to launch, we go out to schools and we test in your classrooms, because you guys are as much a part of our design as any of those designers. Yes, ma'am. What was the first game we developed? Ooh, that's a good question. One of the first games we developed was actually for Houghton Mifflin, and we developed a whole series of virtual science investigations that taught kids all about physics, and we did this really cool maze game that taught you about gravity. Yes? How long does it take to make a game? That's an excellent question. She asked how long it takes to make a game. You can actually build a game in a week. A really simple little game. Like we built something like Angry Birds for one of our clients, and it was less than a week to develop, including all of the art. A game like this can take a couple of years to build. It really depends on how many hours of play, how much content you have, how complex the characters are, whether you're building it in HTML5 or Unity, how much testing you want to do. Any other questions? None? All right. Thank you guys very much. I hope you have a great time today. And again, thank you to Ed and team for pulling this together. Have a great week.
Great, thank you so much. So that concludes our speaker series, but we do have a video to show you to finish off the Ed Games Expo for schools.
Yeah, and again, thank you guys for coming. Again, the very fact that you are here shows your commitment and interest to getting a sense of what's out there in terms of how we can make technology fun for learning. So I'm actually going to go up after this video. I'll be upstairs during office hours. I'm a big fan of mentorship, so would love to get a sense of what you're thinking about, whether it's careers and innovative technologies across different subjects. Would love to get a sense of what you're thinking about, and and maybe we can bounce ideas off each other. So I'll be upstairs on the 4th floor.
Great, and if you guys talk to your teachers after today, you have questions or you have reflections on learning games that you tried out or reviews, send those to your teachers and ask your teachers to send those to me. I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking. Hopefully you got some great ideas today. Can we roll that video?
Hi, I'm Mix Collins and welcome to Hathaway Brown School in Cleveland, Ohio. We're an all-girls school with a 140-year history of innovation in education. This year we decided to bring the Department of Education funded game ECO into the classroom. Come hear what our students have to say about the experience.
I was pretty excited to try ECO. I've never really played a game that's like that, and so I was interested to kind of explore and go into it without knowing too much. That was part of the interest.
I was excited to be able to play a game in our class and to see something that people had worked hard on.
At first I wasn't really sure what to think about it because I didn't really have much of a visual understanding of what it might look like. But then when I heard it was a little bit more like Minecraft, well, it was a little bit more interesting after I heard about that.
I thought it was an interesting concept. I didn't know if I would enjoy the game because it sounded very agricultural, and I didn't know if it would be as fun as it was going to be.
I thought, oh, cool. Let's try it. I was excited. I wasn't expecting all of the independence that you get in ECO. You're able to go and kind of explore and figure things out for yourself. Feels more like a real-world situation. If there isn't much instruction, there's just some guidance, and you're kind of given the freedom to do what you want within the game.
All of us were struggling to find food because the other class took it all. But once we did, we just found a bunch of corn. It was great. We all had stuff to eat.
When I found food for the first time after I had been starving for a few days because I wasn't able to find berries.
We're all kind of shouting out, like, where are the berries? Or like, what do I do? I'm stuck in a ditch, and kind of trying to help each other and, you know, running into different people in the game.
When I chopped down my first tree and then realized that it used up all of my energy and all my calories, and then I couldn't do anything else because I was too hungry to work. So it's kind of funny, but I'm learning how to harvest corn right now. So that's something new for me.
I think it's a good game to build community and work together with your other classmates.
It was cool to sort of cheer each other on and share materials.
It could be used in schools to simulate a real-world situation where you're trying to achieve something with only a finite number of resources.
It's not only entertaining, it is a sort of different way of learning that might work better for a lot of kids.
Games make it more fun to learn, and for that reason, people will learn more because they're more engaged in it.
It's a way for students to engage with the material more, and a lot of people learn differently, and having a game and having it be really interactive like that probably would help some students feel like they're learning in a more fun or engaging way.
So yeah, it gives you a first-hand experience of something that you otherwise wouldn't be able to really see and get a chance to do.
It's more fun to learn that way.
Oh, make it so that I can play it on my Mac, on my MacBook. Thanks.
Great, thanks. So we put that video up there for you just to see an example of a game that can be played by a whole class, and that is a fun experience for the students in that video. So thanks to the class there for producing that. Okay, that does it. Thanks again to the Kennedy Center, and we'll see you next year, hopefully.